Anti-immigration sentiment was on a sharp rise in the United States. Americans were also seeing what was happening in Europe and saw the Russian monarchy collapse. Communist revolutions were starting to spread. Just a few years ago, removed from the economically imbalanced Gilded Age, some Americans were starting to listen to the communist message. Communism promised equal income and equal access to resources. Now, we know that simply wasn't true, but the message started to spread. This caused fear to most Americans that opposed communism and wanted to keep what was theirs. The environment of fear was in full force as Americans wanted to stop the spread of communism. Of course, what many people overlook is why the message was able to spread so quickly. Well, for one, it didn't help that there were actual European anarchists causing trouble, and bombs were to be mailed to politicians and prominent members of society. An Italian radical tried to bomb the Attorney General's office. 8 bombs exploded in 8 different cities on the same day. Mitchell Palmer instituted the Palmer raids around 1919, and immigrants were zeroed in for these raids. Russians were targeted due to the communist revolt that occurred 2 years earlier in Russia. People were being arrested without cause or evidence. 3,000 people were arrested. The most known case of questionable persecution was the case of Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti. They followed an Italian anarchist group called the Anarchists. These men were arrested for the murder of 2 men during a robbery. During the trial, witnesses put these men at the scene of the crime, but the physical evidence presented was questionable at best. Despite this, the men were convicted of murder in the second trial. Each victim was represented in separate trials and were put to death. Despite significant appeals, a growing following of people sympathetic to Sacco and Vanzetti's plight, and even a confession that was to clear Sacco and Vanzetti, it didn't matter to the judge. Their convictions stood and were executed in August of 1927. The question of whether or not Sacco and Vanzetti did this crime is still there. We don't really know.